Hey guys, welcome back to my another video. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can trigger the REST API to the socket.io. So basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna trigger the endpoints in REST API, and we're gonna show in our HTML as a real time applications here. As you guys see in the screen here, I have here the in the left side I have the endpoint which is running on 3001, and it's going to API v1 something called forecast, and it's sending something called count. And this is the front end application that is running on it localhost 3001. The both are running on the same server, but this is the front end, and this is what we are inserting to our backend applications. So here, as we see, I changed my count as 12, and as you guys can see, the count 12 is automatically changes on this one without refreshing the page. So basically, how it's really is happening is when I send these endpoints on backend server, then backend server will emit the message to our socket, and once it's emitting the message to the socket, then socket will send it here, and it will reflect it without changing the pages. That's what's happening here. All right, so it's already connecting this application to the socket. That's why here is a connection point of the socket. So if I refresh it also, then what will happen is, yep, it's going to refresh the page, nothing up. It's not going to show up. And yes, and if we add it here, then it's going to show up. So if I add it, then it's going to show up here. So this is basically what is going to use for like enterprise editions of the applications. When there is an admin part or when there is owner of the company, they want to see some shells, they want to see some the real-time applications, the real-time data, then basically the any of the endpoints will be triggered from the different application can trigger these endpoints and send the data, and it will save in a database the business logic, whatever they want to put at the business logic, it will happen, and it can show definitely in a screen in real time, so he don't have to refresh the page. He can see the real time what's going on for their business. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build one socket, we're gonna build a REST API, and whenever the REST API will be a trigger using the GET request, you guys can also build the get post request, but for this one I'm going to do a get request for easy, and yep, it's going to change on our the real-time application right here. So let's quickly build that, and I have a folder here called rest socket. So this is a blank project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an npm project for here. So I'll just do npm init. So now it will provide me informations of the project. So I'll just press enter everything. So now it will give me the new project called package.json, the new file called package.json, and it's going to create a new npm project here. So this is my blank and npm project. So the next step is I will add a couple of more dependencies here. The first thing is I'm going to install is the Express, because we are going to build the REST application using the Express. The second one, what we do is we need a socket for a real-time application. So whenever the endpoints will be triggered, then the socket will be reflect and changes in the HTML. Okay, so let's install this. And third one is we are also using the EJS for our front-end engine. So we're gonna install the EJS. You guys don't need to use the EJS. You can also use the socket IO JS on the front end using the Angular or React or Vue or a basic HTML page as well. But I'm using the EJS, and I'm gonna run the EJS same server here, which is a port 3001. So let's see that what is installed on package.json. So here in the dependencies, it installed the EJS, Express, and Socket IO. The next one I'm going to install on is a nodemon on my dev dependencies. And nodemon is a library which you can do a hot reload on the server side, not in a front end, but in a server side. So you don't have to stop the server and run the server again and again. Okay, so all the dependencies had been installed. So the now next is I'm going to call index.js here. So in index.js, now I will set up the Express server. To set up the Express server, we need to get require here from Express. Okay, we just install the Express here, so we'll just use the Express here. So from Express is basically it will give us the function, so it will give us an app. So in the app now we need to set up the couple of the things here. The first thing what we set up is we set up our view engine. So the view engine what we're gonna set up is we're gonna use a EJS. That's what we installed is. So we're gonna use a EJS here. And the next one is we need to also do a couple of more setup for our JSON. When we do a post request, then we will do a URL cleanup, stuff like that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set here. So we're gonna do our express.set URL URL encode, and we're gonna make this the extended as a false. Okay, and the next is we're gonna set up the another one called whenever we will get the data from the body, then we will use the express.json. It should be express here. So now this is going to be our landing page, the main home page. So what happened if it's a landing page? Okay, if it's a landing page, if it's a get on the landing page, then what we should return, right? For now, let's return something here. So it will give us the function here, which is give us the request and the response. So in a response, what we're gonna send is we're gonna send the message here. Just for now is the index. That's it. The lastly is we need to run our app, and we are running our app using the listen function, and we are running in 3001. And yeah, this also we can give a console message here if we want that we will just print on the console that server is running, something like that. Okay, so once we do this everything, so the next is we need to do start this file. So we can use using a node.index here directly like this. It's a false. Extended false. Oh, this should be a false here, that's why it's complaining. So yep. So what we can do is we can use a node.index, so our server is running. The problem of this node.index, what we run is every time when we change it, then we need to stop the server and run again. So that's why what we installed before is a nodemon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a script for a nodemon here. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a new script called start. Okay, start, and this start will basically do a nodemon, and this will run index.js. I think we need a comma on here on the back. So what we do is we'll just do a comma in the back here. So I'll just do a save. So once we do a save here, the things what we're going to do is we're going to do npm start. So once we do npm start, so it's going to run our the backend server, which is going to be running in 3001. So if I run on 3001, then what we see is the index. So where this index is rendering from, right here, the landing page, right? Here what we run is index as an index. So we are also using the view engine for EJS. So now let's set up that one. For that one, we'll create another folder here called views, and inside the views we will create a file called index.ejs. And in here we'll set up the HTML file here, HTML5, and I'll just paste here the documents. Okay, so now we're gonna render it. So we just use a render function to render it, and we just tell the index to render it. And now this index render will look for a views folder, and it will go here and it will render it. Because we already set up the view engine here, that's why it's looking for that. So if I refresh it, if everything's right, yep, it does shows me our documents here. Okay, so now our view engine has been set up as well. So now the next is let's set up the router part here. So what we're gonna do for a route, we're going to create another folder called here routes, and inside the routes we're going to create something called socket router, socket router.js. So basically in socket router we will create a router for forecast, the things what I saw you before. Then the forecast we send some data, so that's what we're going to create here. To create that we need to get a express again. So to get a express, what we use is we use a require, it's express the modules, so we need to get this express. So from express we could able to get a router, so that's why we used our express here. So here what we use express the router. So now here what we get is our router. Okay, so then now we get a router. So on this router what we're gonna do is let me create one function called socket.router, socket.router here. So I'm going to copy this router and I'm going to put inside the socket router, and I'm going to use everything inside the router here. So in a router now what we're going to get is we get a get here. So in a get now we're going to create here called forecast. So that's the what we see here, the endpoints. We're going to create a forecast endpoints, and it will also give us the response and sorry, request and response here. So now here, what happened if you go to the forecast endpoints, right? You then what we need to do is on send. For now, we'll just send something, a message here. We don't send this. We'll just send a message that okay, forecast is here, something like that. Forecast one, whatever. Okay, now we get it here. So now we need to return this router. We create this router and we will return it. Okay, so we return on a socket here, socket router. So we just return the router here. The last step is we need to export the more modules. So we create a module called socket router and we'll just exporting the socket router here. Okay, so that's all what we do for this. Now the next step is we need to use this socket routers modules in our index.js file here. So now let's set up that. Okay, now let's set up that one. To set up that one, what we need to do is here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create our, this is going to be a socket router, okay? So the first thing is we need to import that. So for that one, we create a one constant here and we will require, we can use a require because we create a module there and module is like we export it. So we just need to know where this module is we created. We create it inside the route, we create inside the router, okay? So we create inside this one here socket router. Okay, that's what we created, and we export it as the instance, not as a function here, right? So what we need to do is we need to provide the functions here like this. This is important because we need to pass our IO here for socket. That's what we're going to do later on after we set up the socket. So once we create a router socket, now we need to initiate it in our app, basically the Express app. So here in the users one, we can say that, okay, then if there is a API slash B1, then you need to go to the socket router. That's all what we do. We tell that, okay, if it's B1, then go here. And what we go here is forecast, then show this one. If everything is alright, then it's going to show up the forecast and V1 and forecast. If something is wrong, then we're going to see the error. Okay, everything is alright, so we see our forecast. That's what we see. We see the forecast. Perfect. Everything looks good now. Our this endpoint is also working fine. So the next step is to set up for the socket. So now let's set up a socket here. So for setting a socket, what we need to do is we need to create a server, and we need to get a server from the HTTP. So this is the also one of the requirement that we need to do. We need to create a server, and inside the creating a server we'll tell that, okay, server, you need to use this app, which is basically the Express. Okay, now in a server what we can do is we can able to get IO is basically the we can able to use the IO, and IO we will get from socket.io. Okay, so what we need to do here is we need to use a socket.io dot and not dot, sorry, socket.io, and here in another parenthesis we will pass this server here. So now this is the optional part, the course one. If you're using any other front-end application that is running on different domain, then this is very important, you need to set up, otherwise you will give a course issue. And you need to provide a domain here, or if you put a star, then it will work for all the domain that is running on the front-end applications. Currently I'm running on front-end application on a backend server on 3001, so I don't need this, but anyway I'm going to put it here. Okay, so now once I have this IO, now I can pass this IO on the socket router here. So I'll just pass this IO on my socket router, and in the socket router here now I will get the IO. So whenever we get a forecast, now we can trigger the events here in our socket, and that will reflect on our front-end application. That's what we're gonna do. So now everything looks good here. So now let's go a little bit on the bottom because we need to do a couple of more work. So now what we do is we got this IO, we got this socket, looks everything's good here. So now but we changes our app to our server, and our app is listening on 3001. So instead of listening to the 3001, we need to change this to the server. So once I change it to server, now I just need to save it. I think looks everything's good to me here. So far I know. So if I refresh it now, then if it's there error, then we'll see an error. Nope, there is no error. Everything looks good. Looks like the socket has been connected as well, but we don't know yet. So now let's see if the socket is connected or not. So we will make the socket as connection. We have a IO. On IO we have on functions, and on we can see the connection here. Okay, so on the connection we will see here the another functions which will provide here, and in here we will get your socket. Okay, in a socket now what we see is whenever any of the front-end application will connect to our back-end application, then we will able to get a socket ID, what ID that is our front-end application is connecting. So now if I refresh here, this is our API. No, this is our, sorry, the, yeah, this is basically is our API. So when we run the API, will nothing will happen. But if I go to the 3001, so this is our front end. This is running from EJS. So, but if I run the EJS also, will nothing will happen. Nothing will print here as well. No socket ID. The reason why is in our view, just this one. This is running on localhost 3001, and this is basically the API. The API is also providing this data which I send it. So here we haven't set it up our the socket for a front end part. So now we need to set up a socket for a front end part here. So here in script we can provide a source. If you're using the any other front-end applications such as like a React Node, React, Angular, or the Vue or HTML, JavaScript application, I would say, then you need to provide here the socket uh, socket.io.js file. Okay, and you can easily can get from CDN the socket.io from CDN, and you could able to use this socket.io. I could also able to use it, or I could also able to get it from my server, which is this is no server. I have it here. So let me try to get that from that. So if I do a socket.io.js. So once I initiated this, so now we need to know that this is working or not. For that one, let me write some script here on our front end. So in the script here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create here something called socket and instance, and this will come from the IO. Sorry, not OP, IO. So once it's initiated, if everything is all right, then we will see there are some objects here from socket. So if I save it and if I refresh, yep, it's connected. Its connection is true, and here is IO stuff, and here is ID that is printing here. Our front end is connecting to our socket. So if I go for backend here, as you guys can see, is the same ID that is printing. So if I refresh again, then it will give me a new ID, and if I see it here, the new ID has been printed. So our front-end application is connected to our socket. Okay, that's what it does. So our initial goal is to whenever we run this API forecast, then we want to see the data here is reflecting. That's what we want to do. For doing that one, we already know that it's everything is connected. So now the last step is we need to send here. Now currently what we're doing is when we do a forecast, we're just sending here the forecast in this API. But we don't want to send that. We want to send to IO, right? But what we want to send it for this demo purposes, I just want to send the parameter that is giving from here. Okay, for that one, what we're going to do is we can get this parameter first, and that parameter is called count, and we will just get this count from query. And if there is a query called count, and we can also validate like if there is a count exists and error something like that. Let's do that. If there is a no count or something like that, if there is nothing inside it, then what we're going to do is we're going to send here the JSON, and the message is count not exist, something like that. Okay, and we can send here the status. Also we can send status code is 4041. Okay, so this is what we did here. So now though, if there is a count exist, then what we're gonna do, right? If there is a count exist, then basically we're gonna use this IO. So this IO is coming from the socket. That's what we pass from our index here, index.js. If you guys remember, then I passed the IO, right? Let me pick this. I passed the IO here. So in IO, so here in IO, what we get is in IO dot, now we can able to emit it. So basically we just emit it here. Okay, so here what we do is we send the emit call mod is such as like modified. We send the modified forecast, and now here we can able to send a message. So the message is going to be count. So whenever it's happening here something, then we just say the mod. Okay, so after I send this, and then we're gonna send here the data deliver or count data deliver, something like that, right? Let's assume the data is delivered, right? Whenever we mod forecast, then data is delivered. So now if I refresh here, then if everything is all right, then we'll say a data deliver. Okay, we see a JSON message called data deliver here, which is good. But in the front end, we didn't see anything. So if I put it here, my front end application, and this is going to be backend API. So if I run this API here, data is delivered, but nothing which we saw because we haven't wrote any code or EJS. We just initiated a socket. That's all what we did, right? So what we need to do is we just need to listen it. So we use on here, and we just need to grab what is the message what we provided here, mod forecast. So we just listen the mod forecast, and if everything is all right, then we will see our data in the mod forecast here. So basically we will see the count data here because that's what we send it here. So if everything's all right, then we will see our data here whenever our endpoints will trigger. This is our endpoint. So if I refresh, then we will, okay, this is our front end here. So if I refresh, here is a 1 because we send the count as 1. So if I do the 3, we see as a 3. So our real time is working, guys. So this is how we print it here. Yep, we can print it on the screen as well, or we could also draw some chart if there is a good data is sending, right? Then we could able to send the data as well. So here what we do a forecast, and for here is we can write a span here, and we give an ID has a count. So this is going to be pretty easy now. So if I do here document dot query selector, doesn't matter if you can select by the ID, it's okay. And value, or not value, inner HTML, sorry, let me print in HTML count. That's it. And if I can delete this as well, I don't even need it. So now I will just leave it here. So now what I do is if I refresh here, it's refreshing. Oh, do I need to refresh? Yep, I need to refresh this one as well. So if I refresh, yep, 3 here. So if I change something here, go, yep, it's gonna show up without refreshing, guys. Our endpoints will send it without refreshing, and it's gonna show up. This is, oh, sorry. So we're gonna write here, please do subscribe. Yep, it does work, guys. So that's all for this video. I hope you guys learned something. I'm gonna put this code on a GitHub, and please let me know if you guys have any question. I'm gonna put a more tech tutorials on this channel, so please do subscribe. And thank you very much, guys, for watching. Bye for now.